Okay, welcome everybody. Glad to have you here with us today. My name is Ian Alexander. I head up marketing for telemetry, and I'm joined by Stephen Schwander, who heads up our client solutions group. Good morning, Stephen.
Good morning, and good morning and afternoon, everyone.
And today we're going to talk about diversity hiring, right? How to infuse diversity into your hiring process, marketing and managing a diverse talent pool. It's a very topical topic in today's world, given sort of the political and socio-political climate here in the U.S. for sure, and one that has gotten a lot of interest. We have a lot of people on the conference call today, so glad to do that. Happy to talk about how to market and manage a diverse talent pool. Just a couple of housekeeping things as we get started. You have the ability to ask questions through the chat panel on your GoToWebinar console, which should be on your screen. So if you have a question, go ahead and type it as you think of it. A lot of times in these presentations, certain information is coming up in a slide or two. So we typically get to these questions at the end and we answer the ones that haven't already been answered. But definitely if it's appropriate for the conversation, if you give it to us as you have it, we're able to integrate it into the conversation. Also, you will be getting a copy of the slides at the end. So that's one question maybe we don't have to ask during the webinar. And then finally, just a little bit about telemetry. Stephen and I are from telemetry. Telemetry is a recruitment marketing platform that automatically finds, attracts, and engages the talent that you need both today and in the future. It comes in a single social and mobile optimized platform that integrates with your ATS. So that's where Stephen and I sort of come from. That's where our experience comes from. And a lot of what we talk about is what we learn in implementing sort of modern recruiting practices with our clients and with prospective clients. So with that, let's talk about the agenda today. We're going to do a little diversity hiring overview. We're going to talk about some of the recruiting challenges that we see organizations face. Some key practices for increasing the diversity within your recruiting process and your talent pool, and take questions at the very end. So when we talk about diversity recruiting and the importance of diversity within your organization, I think it's pretty widely known at this point that diversity in the workplace is more than just sort of a compliance issue. We live in a global economy. We live in a diverse nation. Our customer base is very diverse. So having that reflected in our workforce enriches creativity. It brings additional perspectives into strategies and decision making, and overall makes your organization more successful. In fact, it's a competitive advantage, right? So McKinsey a while back did a study that looked at level of diversity within an organization against financial returns, and companies that scored in the top 1/3 in regards to percentage of diversity outperformed organizations in the median by 35%. So again, less of a compliance issue, more of a competitive advantage, right? Typically, historically, diversity in the recruiting process has been handled through attraction-based strategies. That's more advertising-based strategies, where you're putting your jobs in front of a diverse group and trying to attract them to your jobs and to your organization. That's through diversity job boards, etc. On a global scale, given the sort of supply and demand dynamics within the US right now, there's pressure to be more proactive in your recruiting. Organizations are moving towards models where they need to be more effective in hiring candidates that are already employed, what with our low unemployment. So they're moving to more outbound, proactive, selective recruiting processes, particularly with things like high volume jobs, specialized jobs, where it's very difficult to attract the best candidates. So again, we're seeing this globally across all recruiting happening. It's something that definitely needs to happen with recruiting, with diversity recruiting. And the strategies that recruitment marketing brings to the recruitment process are a real good solution for addressing your diversity percentages and your diversity recruiting. So So let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we see organizations facing. First is poor access to a diverse candidate pool. As I talked about just a second ago, these sort of attraction-based strategies where you're posting jobs to diversity boards, maybe having diversity hiring events, maybe on campus, et cetera, or using services to drive diversity candidates. They often result in sort of what I call diversity on demand. It's kind of a separate checkbox that needs to happen to your recruiting processes. And while it does result in additional diversity in your talent pools, it's really not infusing diversity into your day-to-day talent acquisition activities. And so you're not sort of cultivating that. You're more transactional based, which we'll talk about in a bit. Next is kind of related to that is diversity as an afterthought, right? You're relying on recruiters to remember to reach out to diverse candidates, to go out of their way to get diverse candidates, and that results in, for many jobs, not enough diverse candidates, as well as sometimes maybe none. You're not seeing underrepresented employee groups within your in your talent pools. So that's another thing that we see organizations struggle with. Lack of consistent procedures. So a lot of organizations don't have standard, consistent diversity recruiting processes and procedures that are leveraged throughout the organization. That's the bad news. The good news is that a lot of organizations don't have that for all their recruiting, right? There's a pretty widespread lack of sort of real consistent processed operationalized recruiting out there. It exists for sure, but it's it's a discipline that organizations are moving to by and large in general. So when you're in that kind of situation where you don't have sort of processes you can leverage to then change or then infuse diversity procedures into, then you're behind the eight ball. It makes it difficult to share best practices or even identify best practices if different recruiting groups are doing different things to get candidates. Using different channels, et cetera. It makes it difficult to kind of find those best practices and then leverage them across the organization through training, et cetera. Another one is no compelling employer value proposition for diverse candidates, right? So if you're one of the organizations that spent the time to really identify what your employer brand is and really amplify the employer value proposition that you have as a whole, oftentimes we don't see that leveraged through to underrepresented employee groups. So you may have sort of a broad commitment to diversity in your employee value proposition, but then as you are addressing those diverse candidate groups, are you leveraging that messaging? Are you amplifying the parts of your brand that really speak to those particular groups? We don't see a lot of that. And that makes it difficult to really engage those candidates and ultimately hire them because you're not really offering them a compelling employer value proposition. Stephen, why don't you take the next one? Lack of referral programs.
Sure, absolutely. So another challenge is the lack of referral programs or referral programs specifically aimed at underrepresented employees, right? So this is a real challenge for companies to develop organic channels to diverse candidates. And again, I think we've spoken so much about, job posting and inbound attraction strategies that are very passive and frankly, very compliance related, ticking off the boxes. Even as I sit with clients in my current job, they're looking to say, well, we want to be able to know where we've posted things, but they're not focused on the people that are coming back through those postings. So, the same thing with referral programs. They may have a general referral program in the organization, but they're ignoring the diversity within their organization to really tap that. So so it's a lack of really targeted referral programs that are going to help diversity. Another one is a lack of outbound diversity hiring capability. Now, what do we mean by this? Because this hasn't typically been spoken of in the diversity realm. Again, the diversity realm has so much been a compliance issue or corporate responsibility issue. Oftentimes, those officers don't even sit within the talent acquisition organization, right? So when we think about outbound hiring, we think about proactive sourcing. And when you think about proactive sourcing, well, there's a lack of the ability or the process, as Ian said earlier, to go out and pull new candidates in a proactive basis that are targeted on diversity candidates, right? So the result in a very difficult time filling specialized and high volume positions, specifically with diverse candidates. There's also a challenge to actually see what's going on, and this is actually a very difficult challenge specifically for diversity. We don't have repeatable, measurable processes in place. We don't have automation in place. It's difficult knowing what programs or processes are actually driving results. Again, we do those things that tick box the compliance bit, but we're not sure whether they're actually working. We don't have an ability to identify, the areas that aren't working for us, and then, identify the areas that we need to improve. And frankly, it's very difficult from a candidate pre-application perspective to even identify, who that diverse talent pool is. Obviously, legal risk is an ongoing challenge, and again, this is where ATSs in the olden days, right, came in to help with OFCCP compliance, and now even CRM tools and marketing tools are having to help with OFCCP and EEO compliance, and those areas where they don't have, again, the consistent process or a platform in place that's going to help identify what's happening. It's very difficult to be compliant, across the entire team, when these processes and systems are not in place. Also the platform, right? So I mentioned that earlier, but ATS doesn't do pre-application processes well, and the benefit is sometimes in the ATS we might have the data to identify diversity candidates who are getting so far in the process post-application, but when it comes to actually building the pipeline and bringing new diverse candidates in, the ATS is not going to help us with that. And so a lot of clients just don't have the platform in place that are going to help with diversity. So they're using diverse tools to manage things like college recruiting, and sometimes there's multiple sourcing tools in there. And again, because there's no single system that's managing sort of the full life cycle, what we like to call pre-application process, again, it's very difficult to push success.
So when we talk about looking at how to address some of these challenges, it requires kind of a new approach to acquiring talent, and definitely into acquiring diverse talent, and sort of to understand that you think about traditional historical recruiting has been very kind of transactional based, very assembly line like, right? So you get an open requisition, it's assigned to a recruiter. They go out, they maybe advertise for candidates. They may have some candidates that they've worked with in the past. They reach out to that are appropriate for the job. Get 50, 100, 150 candidates in the pipeline, vet those down to 4 or 3, then go ahead and do the final vetting. You hire one, and then the next requisition comes in. You start all over again, right? Organizations are very strongly moving in the direction of relationship-based recruiting, where it's less of a transactional situation and it's more of a long game, right? So as you bring candidates in to look at specific jobs, or you attract them through jobs that you've had, or you reach out and source candidates, you're keeping track of those candidates. You're keeping track of their profile information. You're building a centralized database to then be able to continually market jobs to them over time and create relationships where you can educate them about your company via email, via social media, et cetera, and get warmer candidates that are more predisposed to doing that. And in adopting this kind of methodology, you're setting the stage for being able to really cultivate diversity within that talent pool and measure it and grow it over time, and begin to infuse diversity into your entire hiring process, not as an afterthought. And so if we break this down into sort of the top level steps to doing this more relationship-based recruiting, it starts with centralizing your talent. That's your past applicants, that's your internal employees, that's your external access to talent, whether that be job boards or resume databases or social networks. You build pipelines within that talent, so you begin to segment that talent into around key job families or employee target groups that you're looking to target. You then engage that talent over time via, again, email programs, social media campaigns, etc. Then when you have jobs open, you make that your main place that you source talent, right? Because you're building this centralized pool and you're organizing it and you're deciding who gets in it and who doesn't. So you're really kind of cultivating the mix and the diversity within that talent pool. And then when you're using this methodology, using a consistent procedure around hiring, consistent processes, and you're able to analyze then what's working and what's not. Every recruiter, every tactic, every program, every source, understanding how many are giving you the results that you need in the areas that you need, and you're able to then optimize and begin to make your recruiting operations more efficient. And so when we talk in those terms, recruitment marketing platforms are really a great solution for diversity hiring as well as your entire hiring process. A good recruitment marketing platform is going to automate the posting of your jobs to both regular job boards as well as diversity job boards, and really track the results that you get from that. A good recruitment marketing platform is going to centralize all your potential candidates into that proprietary talent pool, right? Including, as I said, past applicants, internal employees, etc. And it's going to give you a platform then to host consumer quality candidate experiences, allow you to create career sites that really are flexible, targeted. You can create multiple landing pages for different employee groups, different job families. You're able to kind of target and personalize an applicant's or a candidate's journey as they explore your company on your career site. So you're really targeting specific segments with the messages and the jobs and the content that you want to give them. So it's going beyond that basic ATS capability and really allowing you to, as I said, provide these consumer quality candidate experiences that candidates are used to these days, just in the real world. And the benefit of that is you have one system that syncs jobs and candidates with your ATS, so everybody's working with the same data pool, whether they're in the ATS or whether they're in the recruitment marketing platform. There you get full source to hire analytics, so you're able to see what programs are working and what's not. You're able to take advantage of automation to diversify your talent pool, so you can automate some of the programs that you use to reach diverse candidates, so you know that they're happening and you can measure their results. And again, it's perfect for going beyond that diversity as an afterthought situation that we talked about earlier, and really infusing diversity into that talent pool that all your recruiters are using, in the same way that you're growing diversity within your organization in your employee groups or your overall employee group. So let's talk about some key practices around that, Stephen.
Yeah, I think this kind of interesting as we jump into these key practices. As Ian was speaking, my head, I'm getting to that age where I'm thinking back around history, and I'm hitting my 20-year mark in this talent acquisition space. And remembering back before we had the tool sets that we have today, diversity hiring, in my experience in the Fortune 500 realm, at least in the companies I worked in, was some of the more forthright and proactive recruiting mechanisms. So I remember, building relationships with organizations like, Women in Technology and Black Engineers, and going out and building relationships with local colleges that had diverse candidates, and doing work with inroads, etc. What we didn't have was the ability to put that into a system like we're about to talk about now, so that it could not only drive better success, but then we would be able to learn more. So, when we begin to talk about key practices, first is that diversity recruiting is recruiting. I once had somebody say to me, "Do you know how minority candidates find jobs?" I said, "No, this is the challenge." And they said, "Well, it's typically the way everybody else finds jobs." And so the challenge now is that diversity recruiting is recruiting, and we need to learn how to do it in a way that targets folks and creates messages and calls to action that are going to drive success, right? So first thing is, we don't want to silo diversity hiring. It's not something off on the side that we do because it's important, but not linked in with the rest of our recruiting. It's got to be integrated into our day-to-day recruitment process. We want to focus on building, diverse candidate resources for recruiters, so that data comes in that's actionable for them. We want to use automation and standardization. Tools that weren't available to us 10 years ago are now available to us to help drive a lot of this. And then we want to be able to measure diversity along with all the talent acquisition processes that we currently measure, and measure it either as a channel or as a program, or as a campaign, but be able to deliver those results.
And I think that's just one of the most key messages in this entire presentation. If we can get one thing across, it's really infusing that diversity hiring into your overall hiring processes. Can't be a separate thing if it's going to be an ongoing strategic advantage for you competitively from a talent standpoint.
Yeah, and so again, I've mentioned this a couple of times, tools that we have today that we didn't have 10 years ago. Let's leverage that technology. Let's not trip over it, right? But let's leverage it. Recruitment marketing platforms such as the one that we implement with our clients, they can support and measure regular as well as diversity talent acquisition efforts, right? So it doesn't matter who you're targeting and what jobs you're targeting. The platform is going to help you to be able to do that segmentation, drive the automation, centralize and segment your talent pool. It's vital through big data that we understand who's in our talent pool, and this is not only skills related, but interest related and diversity related. You want to support targeted communications with your diverse talent population. So can you use technology, right, to segment that population and then leverage communication, strategic and automated communications and automated acquisition? Obviously go beyond the ATS, right? You're not going to establish all of this within your ATS. That measures and tracks diversity post-apply, which is extremely important, but it's not necessarily going to help you open the floodgates at the front of the funnel, right? So it doesn't measure or track what's happening in your sourcing, in your event recruiting, in your attraction recruiting, right? But recruitment marketing platforms are going to enable that, and they're going to help you to track all that pre-applicant recruiting activity and drive success from that space. Now, another key importance here is we said go beyond your ATS. We didn't say leave your ATS behind. It's vitally important that your talent marketing solution be deeply integrated with your ATS. This way now you can track and support the full life cycle from pre-application. They didn't even know who you were, you didn't even know who they were, all the way through to interview and ultimately into hire.
Right, and again, the key to this is to really centralize all those candidates into a single pool. All your sources of talent, including internal talent like past applicants and employees, referrals, but also external talent. So if you have access to external, diversity databases or external job boards, et cetera, centralize that all into one place where you can make growing that now a key a key metric for you, right? So you've got this centralized database. What do you want to do? You want to grow it. You want to get more and more candidates in there, and you want to make sure that the diversity population within that centralized talent pool is appropriate for your overall hiring goals. And then you want to, within that talent pool, identify diversity. Now, that could be a sensitive area, but some ideas that we have in terms of how to go about that. Again, there's no sort of one way to do it. But one of the ways is, as you get candidates in from diversity sources, whether that be job boards or resume database searches, et cetera, you can tag those candidates as underrepresented potential employees, right? That's a real easy way, and it's a pretty fail-safe way to do that. You can put diversity-related content on your website, and then monitor candidates that are driven to that particular content. So you can see if certain candidates are consuming diversity content, or they're applying from a diversity content page, or they're signing up for a talent network from a diversity content page. You got a good clue there that you might have some underrepresented groups there. You can search resumes within your talent pool just like you would source from it and search for candidates, but you can search for things like keywords, memberships that they may have within their resumes, to really hone in on talent that may be diverse and maybe have interests that are important to you as a recruiter. You can, on talent network opt-ins, right? When someone's opting into your talent network and saying, "Well, I don't see a job, but I'm kind of interested in your company," you could ask them if they'd like more information about diversity within your organization, and then use the answer to that question in the sign-up process to then segment and identify candidates who may be, again, in underrepresented groups. And then use your technology to then track diversity referrals. So if you have a diversity referral program where you have some of the diversity groups within your organization referring within their communities, then you can tag those as well, and bring them in as helping you to identify candidates that may be in diverse populations.
So, Ian, I think this is critical, right? I mean, we talk a lot about segmenting and marketing and automating that process, but, again, until you can identify the segment that you're looking to market to, it's really difficult to do. And, I can almost feel a couple of folks on the phone who maybe are on the more compliance end of the spectrum here, as opposed to the sourcing end of the spectrum, get a little bit, queasy about some of this stuff. But what, we're actually talking about, just typical big data stuff. Some of the, some of the practices we're talking about are typical practices that anybody in a marketing realm would look at in terms of, taking data points to help define who a population might be. And, in every single person, your data is not going to be exactly perfect. Good example, I logged on to diversity.com today and clicked on their candidates, and the first one that popped up was a guy who looked a lot like me. And I don't know if you saw my picture, but I am not a diversity candidate. I am now in a protected class. So the reality is that no diversity database is going to be quote unquote 100% diverse, but these are real tools that can help us. I'd like to add another one to this, which is just beginning to engage people. I worked with a program called Inroads back when I was in a Fortune 500 talent acquisition role, and if we had had the tools that we have today, we could have kept track of the folks who came through our internship program. Some of them we hired early on, but then I think about how we could have used their connections in their greater community to push for referrals, etc., and even developing, engaging around college and campuses and other referral networks. Again, how do you pull data in, have the data elements so that when you're connecting out? So I think, to me, this is, if that earlier slide was a sort of a quick summary, this one becomes really important for me in terms of getting big data to be on your side here.
And so now you've got this talent pool, you're growing it. along with identifying diversity within it, you need to segment it, right? So, as a marketer, I can tell you, if I have a great prospect database with many tens of thousands of potential clients, it does me no good unless I understand, are they appropriate for what I have to offer? And I do that through segmentation. In the same way you do that with your talent pool. So you have many ways you can segment your talent pool. You can segment them into pipelines for specific jobs that are open. That becomes a pipeline to a particular job. You can segment it for typical strategic job families that are very important to the organization. That might be a high volume position, that might be a very specialized position, but you segment your candidate pool into what kinds of candidates in that candidate pool are appropriate for which roles. By the same token, so if you look at this example here, you have a healthcare organization, maybe skilled nursing is a difficult position to keep staffed. Similarly, home health workers, very difficult position to keep staffed, high demand, not a lot of candidates out there. Maybe you have locations in areas with high Hispanic populations, so you have a program where you really want to get more Hispanic physicians in there. Well, create a pipeline for that. And what this does is it allows you to then use this information to understand where your what level of diversity you have within your talent pool. If you don't know what the size of your talent pool is, you can't know what percentage of diversity is in there. I would guess that many people on the phone right now or on the webinar right now can kind of track, well, how many maybe applicants we got that were diverse and how many hires. But if you're not seeing any results there, you don't have a lot of touch points, a lot of leverage points to understand where's the problem. Is the problem that they're not getting to interview? Is the problem that we're not engaging them at the front end? Taking this approach allows you to really look ahead of your need and say, look, we want to hire Hispanic physicians, but we don't have enough to meet the demand. So we need to go out there and source more of them. We need to attract more of them so we can build that pipeline. And again, at the end of the day, the goal is there to be able to grow, to infuse that diversity into the recruiter's day-to-day activity so that when they run a search for candidates, they're getting a diverse result, right? So, and the way you do that there, again, we talked about some of the ways for identifying diversity. The one thing we didn't mention was leverage your recruiters as they're in there sourcing and searching for candidates and interacting with candidates. They can update information. They can add the kinds of segmentation data that you need to create these kinds of pipelines. And then again, at the end of the day, you're measuring the size and you're trying to grow that diverse pipeline within your overall talent pool. Next, we want to heat your talent pool. So you've got this large and growing talent pool. You're measuring and monitoring sort of the percentage of diversity within that talent pool. It gives you the opportunity then to nurture those candidates over time. You can send, say, targeted emails to diverse candidate groups, right? Asking them to apply for specific jobs that you think meet their qualifications. You can send targeted emails and run social network campaigns to educate them about the benefits of your company, what it's like to work there, how it fosters diversity. You can spotlight diversity achievement within your organization. You have underrepresented employee groups achieving things within the organization or giving testimonials about the culture of your organization. You can send those out to these candidates ahead of need before you're actually trying to hire them for a position. That way, when it comes time that they do rise to the top there and get into the interview process, that you have a candidate that's predisposed to work for your organization. Along those lines, set up specific targeted, and this is a big theme through everything, right? This whole approach to recruiting allows you to be much more targeted with what you do at every level. So whether that's targeting, home health aides in general, or whether that's targeting specific racial groups or genders within these particular disciplines as well, that this whole approach allows you to target those. So, and in that vein, go ahead and set up diversity-focused talent networks, right? So in the same way you want to engage passive candidates, if you set up a separate diversity talent network, you can then target them with them to kind of opt into the jobs that meet their background, as well as track them as diversity candidates, but also, again, reinforce that employer brand and the amplified diversity element in it to appeal more to a diverse candidate group. And then again, source from that talent network. As you get those candidates in, those passive candidates, make sure you're sourcing from them.
Yeah, this is one that we really like to say is to be proprietary. In other words, this is your data. You're not jumping into Monster and trying to figure out who the heck is a diverse candidate in Monster and market out to them. You're actually building and as heating up. I love that, right? Heating up that talent pool. I like to call maturing the data that's in there. But all of this hard work is not to build somebody else's talent pool or to let it set. This is actually to build your strategic and competitive advantage from both a talent and a diversity talent perspective. So you want to maximize all your resume searches, so wherever you actually own access to data, you want to maximize and not leave a single resume in their database that you've already paid for. You want to bring that in. You want to pull in candidate profiles from places like LinkedIn. Jobwell, for instance, is another candidate database that's building a specifically diverse candidate database. You want to be advertising not only for jobs but also for maybe banner ads in specific diversity organizations with calls to action that might lead people into your talent network, for instance, right? So wherever you can, you want to have your message out there, and you want to be sourcing out there, and your message should allow calls to action that are going to build up your talent network. And of course, your sourcing should be building up your talent network, so that no matter what you're doing across your entire recruitment spectrum, that data ends up in your proprietary database. And once you've got them, you never have to pay for them again. You're not going through the blood, sweat, and tears of trying to find them again. Now you can be much more strategic about engaging, growing the depth of data that you have against your folks and engaging them, right? Then you can sort of educate, engage, and then market jobs over time. And also kind of normalize diversity recruiting. I think we kind of alluded to this earlier, that growing, attracting diversity candidates, do that within your centralized talent pool, not outside of it, right? This way it ensures that diversity candidates kind of become part of the recruiter's everyday activity. And this might actually mean that you've got some strategic sourcers or strategic marketers in the organization that help to build this pool, so that recruiters aren't having to worry about going out to get diverse candidates from a separate slate. They naturally come up through the segmentation that Ian talked about earlier, right? So we want to make sure that we're leveraging big data and opt-ins so that we can identify diverse talent, but then we want to make sure that they're segmented from a skill set basis so that they naturally come into our automated processes as we go through that, right? So this is going to eliminate what Ian spoke of earlier as diversity as an afterthought, or the quick run to try to make sure that we've got a diverse candidate slate, and we're starting from scratch every time. So it's going to enrich your recruiting organization, and it's going to be more of an organic experience. You want to integrate it, right? So not only is it normalized in terms of being part of the daily function and just an aspect of that, but it also becomes integrated not only from a process perspective, but from a data perspective and from a technology perspective, right? So sourcing is increasingly important part of modern recruiting organizations, right? That's what keeps me busy, all week is helping clients figure out how they can, make sourcing work on an enterprise basis. Well, you want to integrate, diversity recruiting into that sourcing effort. You want to make your recruitment marketing platform, support an integrated ability to search and source diversity candidates as right alongside all other candidates, and you want to avoid having separate solutions where there's no cross-pollination between them, because again, to the earlier slide, then it's going to become an afterthought. It's not become normalized. It's not going to be part of the process. Therefore, it's not going to be successful, number one, and number two, you're not going to be able to really report in any meaningful way on that. And search first, right? So, if you've got the data, if you've taken the time to develop a really strong proprietary talent pool that is diverse because you're doing all the great things that we're talking about today, then instead of just posting and praying, every time a job opens, search first. Utilize your sourcing tools in your CRM to pinpoint, specific talent, both internal and external, in your own proprietary talent pool. Do that first, right? It's going to do a number of things. Number one, from a diversity perspective, it's going to make sure that you're tapping that diversity pool of candidates. And number two, it's going to keep your days to hire lower because you're getting responses much quicker, right? So because you're always adding, you're always identifying and tracking diversity candidates and skilled candidates, recruiters going to naturally return diversity slates. It just in their everyday searches, right? So it's a good discipline. If you've got the data built up and the data is smart, search first. And also solicit referrals. I think we could probably have 25 data points here as I talk to clients about referral programs. What we're discovering is that there's no silver bullet for referral programs. We just have to make sure that we're constantly working to identify people who would refer appropriate candidates to us, right? So we know that oftentimes our best source for diversity candidates are our own employees, and specifically the diverse population within our employee groups, so that we're not just building social groups within our organization, but we're also leveraging them. So let's say, for sake of argument, you help them maybe log into a special network of people that are going to be proactively referring folks, so that you understand the types of people that they can refer. And again, to our earlier point, if candidates are coming out of this referral mechanism, you've got a much stronger success rate of finding diversity candidates from that. You want to make it easy for employees to add referrals, specifically for underrepresented employees, into our talent pool. You want to dedicate diversity referral portals, as I said earlier. Work with your internal diversity teams, right? And you want to leverage existing programs like your diversity internship I mentioned earlier with Inroads was a great place. I also had relationships with specific universities around New York that I knew could bring not only technical talent but diverse technical talent in, and then we were able to leverage those for referrals. Well, we would have done a lot better 10 years later with the technology tools that we have today. So referrals are key, and they're all over the place. And then you always want to be sourcing, right? So you're always finding people. You're always growing that centralized talent pool. And over time, as I said earlier, it's going to speed up your time. It's going to increase your quality of hire because you're actually growing and maturing and vetting that database constantly over time, and exposing more and more diversity candidates to search results, to email campaigns, to invite them to apply, etc. You can also automate a lot of the sourcing. So, Ian had a nice funnel view before, and oftentimes when you're looking for a pipeline for a specific open position, it is a bit of a funnel effect. And a lot of our automation can take care of some of the top pieces of that funnel, so that what we end up really spending our time on in terms of spending time engaging, building relationships, is that narrow funnel. So if you have a system that can automate based upon the data elements that we've been talking about throughout this entire time, that's a great way to speed up your ability to source the right kinds of candidates, and to specifically and quickly identify diversity candidates and add them to the job pipelines that you're building within your CRM.
And I think this is another big point, Stephen, as we talk about sort of key things within here. You're much more likely to get faster change organizationally if you're automating a lot of the processes for acquiring candidates, as opposed to trying to change behavior or train diversity recruiting and diversity procedures. If you can automate that process, for example, if you have specific jobs that you're trying to hire for. You can set up an automated search that constantly looks for diverse candidates within your own talent pool, as well as within external talent pools like resume databases, et cetera, and constantly brings those in against jobs or just against pipelines and trying to build pipelines ahead of need. You're going to get to where you want to go much faster than trying to change people's behavior to do that.
Well, absolutely. If you can just think about having, depending upon how large your organization is, one or two or three key people who really understand sourcing and understand the big data behind all of this stuff, your recruiters don't have to change so much. They could actually come in and just manage their job pipeline that gets delivered to them automatically. So that's huge.
And telemetry can do that. Little pitch there. So we talked about sourcing, now attraction. And one of the questions was, well, if attraction isn't that effective and you need to move away from it, we're talking a lot about attraction. And that's true. And I think when you look at recruitment marketing in general, it's not about, it's about spreading and being multi-channel with your efforts to acquire candidates, right? So we're not saying don't use attraction. We're saying use attraction in conjunction with candidate relationship and relationship-based recruiting. Use attraction in conjunction with outbound sourcing. And use attraction in conjunction with, recruiting agencies, events, all the other things you do to get candidates in. So when we look at from a diversity standpoint, really optimizing that attraction piece, what we say to everybody is really go broad with your distribution of jobs. So, really use a number of different job boards at the outset. I mean, you've got the capability to really measure and understand how many of these candidates that you attract go through the application process and who are interviewed and are ultimately hired. Start broad, and then begin to look at which sources are giving you the best number of hires, the best number of applicants, et cetera. Refine it down. So start big, refine down. As a marketer, what I always tell people is your job is not to know where to get the best candidates. Your job is to know how to test different channels, read the results, and hone in on the best channels to candidates. So having the framework to do that, start broad, and then use the analytics to hone in on what works. And again, just as the same as we talked about with sourcing, automate your distribution of jobs. Many people say, "Well, we already automate that. We can post one job to many different boards." That's semi-automation. What we're talking about is as a job is opened up within your ATS, if you're using the right tools, you can understand what are the best job boards that give you the best results for those types of jobs. So with telemetry, you can set it up so that as you post as a job gets approved and a rec is opened, it automatically posts out to the boards that are the most effective for that type of job. Now, how do you leverage that for diversity recruiting is make every job go to diversity job boards. And again, it's taking that diversity as an afterthought out of the equation. And it's making sure that when recruiters look at their pipeline of candidates against a job, that they're automatically getting diverse candidates because you've taken it out of their hands. It's not an extra thing they need to do. It absolutely just goes out and automatically posts to those boards. And over time, you can understand which boards are working, which aren't, and you can hone that down. But again, that automated piece is so important to making substantial changes within a short period of time within your organization. So yes, automated candidate attraction. And then again, as I said before, continually measure those, monitor those results, and do more of what works and less of what doesn't work. And again, using the right system will allow you to not only just understand how many people applied for a job, but or clicked through from a job board. You can really see the number of click-throughs, the number of people who started an application, the number of people who completed, the number of people who were hired, and you can use those metrics to find out sort of where your bottlenecks are and which sources are working and which ones aren't.
Delighting diversity. So let's talk a little bit about delighting diversity. So number one is sort of define your diversity brand. I think Ian talked very early. We talked earlier about this in terms of it being a challenge where we don't have one. But what is your employer brand from diverse point of view? And I would argue not only what is your employer brand, but then also kind of what is your general brand as a company. So in a lot of cases, there's a lot of leverage that could be taken in a positive way from your overall corporate brand as well. But this is about starting to define what sorts of messaging can you send out to the diversity candidates in your diverse talent pool as we've identified them before, right? So does your broad employer value proposition change from group to group? If so, then let's make sure that we get those messages out to the right groups.
And just to time check this here, Stephen, we got about 10 minutes left.
Okay. Again, target important groups. I think we touched on a lot of this. So developing message matrices, right, for diverse groups, so that you understand you're going to send, maybe message A out to a specific group, message B out to a specific group. You want to make sure that your platform is going to allow you to do that and measure the results of those different messages, so that you can potentially apply these messages to specific landing pages or application processes, or even into your job description pages as they come out from your emails. And solicit feedback, right? There's a lot of companies out there that provide feedback mechanisms. You want to be able to survey your candidates, understand what their experience is, what is their view of your company from a diversity perspective, and then use that feedback to better refine the messages that you're sending out and make adjustments where it's needed, both in a process as well as a brand messaging piece. Let's just kind of talk now about managing diversity as we begin to close out. You want to standardize and develop diversity best practices, again, together with that normalization and the integration we talked about earlier. So sort of with all your recruiters, sourcers, and marketers, you want to use that single tool, again, so that data is in there and you're following processes that can be best changed to drive success. You want to be able to monitor those results, and you want to standardize your practice around what works and what doesn't in one standard set of tools. And of course, we've said this earlier, so measure everything. And again, this is another call to having a single platform so that you can actually measure things. What does your overall talent pool look like? And what does your overall talent pool look like from a diversity perspective? What diversity sources have been delivering the most results to you, right? What's the talent pool diversity by not only diversity targets, but then also by job families, right? And engagement activity. Is your team actually engaging diverse candidates? So when you look at what your recruiters are doing from an engagement perspective, who are they calling? Who are they phone screening? Who are they sending emails to? Is their daily activity hitting on the diverse candidates that you brought into the organization? Set targets for your diversity pipelines, so you have actually set that goal and then use your analytics to know whether you're meeting them. So what percentage of diverse candidates are returned to routine candidate searches? What types of diversity hires are your diversity hires increasing as you integrate all of this? Are you able to actually measure from your ATS changes in the number of people that are getting hired, as well as just from your marketing perspective?
Great, thanks, Stephen. So now we're going to go through questions. We've got a few questions here and a little bit of time. So let's go through. What exactly do you mean when you say a diverse candidate? Do you mean diverse competencies or different gender? And this was an early question. I think it probably become evident that we're talking about diverse candidates from an ethnic standpoint, from a gender standpoint, from any of the standards that you would use for underrepresented groups within your own organization, in your own culture, your own corporate culture. If the inbound or job board advertising is lacking, then why does recruiting recruiting marketing still rely on similar processes of using job posting as a way to attract candidates. And we talked about this. It becomes not the way that you get to diversity candidates, but one of a number of ways that work together to long-term really allow you to take control and create your own proprietary talent base from all that talent that you're attracting over time. How can we build up such a talent pool in the Netherlands? We have regulations that decide we can't keep detailed information about a person for longer than a year. Well, certainly privacy is an issue, and I don't think myself nor Stephen can comment on specific EU privacy regulations. That said, the one thing that comes to mind for me is if there is a provision for it has to be an ongoing relationship, you can use the tools within a CRM system to annually re-engage those candidates, right? So if you can only keep their data for a year, and again, I'm not a lawyer and I don't understand Netherlands privacy laws, but typical to the types of things I see here in the U.S., there are exceptions for re-engaging people, right? So then you're able to keep their data for if it's a year or whatever. So this whole process of really making nurturing a part of your recruiting process and contacting candidates regularly gives you that ability then to maybe re-engage. But again,
Yeah,
don't think.
and it certainly makes engagement that much more important during the time that you have the data for sure. So, some of our clients who are working in Europe are seeing that that's an important piece because if they haven't had the engagement, they've got to purge the data, and all that work that you built into the database goes away.
Yeah. Does your platform, the final question here is, does your platform, maybe it's not the final question. Does your platform allow for automated drip communication that would allow for nurturing candidates? And the answer is yes. You can schedule communications ahead of time so that they go out at a certain time, and you can sort of manage that. So it does allow you to automate a good portion of that.
Yeah, and also from an engagement perspective there, and I think this works well too. We talked about setting up talent networks. Well, a lot of this is about engaging and asking the right kinds of questions, so that not only can you do drip campaigns, but then based upon responses that people may give you, if you're asking for a response in an online form, as that data comes in, it might trigger a different email out if you're really doing a good job at automating the process in general.
And the final question is, you mentioned a diversity site, JobQuell. So Stephen, JobQuell. Yeah.
JOPWELL. One of our clients, recently asked us to integrate with them. I don't have a login to it, but it looks like they're building a sort of a pool of candidates. You log in to kind of see those folks in. So it looks like it's becoming a good target, specifically I think in the finance realm. And certainly in the Fortune 500 realm.
Okay, so we're about out of time. I just want to let everybody know, if you'd like more information about telemetry, you can visit us at our website. You can reach out to me individually. I've got my email on there, and I can get you the answers to questions that you might have. Also, as part of this webinar, you'll receive a report that we've done, which a lot of this content is based on, which is our diversity strategy snapshot. So you'll get a complimentary version of that 9-page report, as well as the slides for this webinar, and we will make a recording available. And you'll get an email with all those resources in them within 24 hours after we finish here. So look for that in your email. With that, I want to thank everybody for joining us. Thank you, Stephen, for helping out here, and wish everybody a great day.
Thanks, everyone.